Do you know what the word brrr is? B-R-R-R. And the season is coming up, and it's going to be brrr out. I have Paul with me. Paul, I wanted you to introduce yourself to our audience today and tell us what brrr is.
I don't know that I'm actually the subject matter expert on brrr, but I remember when I was initially interested in real estate investing, I watched a lot of videos and read books. Robert Kiyosaki, I'm a big fan of him. And I saw the brrr business model. And what I liked about it is that you could buy into a property that was repressed, fix it, rent it, rinse, repeat. And when you had that ability, you could dress it up any way you wanted. And so that whole brrr methodology was something that I kind of latched onto and thought that would be my best thing. Now, there's a million different types of investors, people that buy rental properties, and it goes from the bottom to the top. I've got my own strategy, my own methodology that I've kind of been refining. I'm not a huge investor, meaning that I've got a regular job, regular career. I've got my own small business. And I really do this.
About. Interesting.
Yeah, but what I think is important to let the audience know is that just a guy like myself, how I went, that pivotal moment when I went from my own single family house, took a little bit of money out of my 401k and bought my first investment property. That was a pivot in time for me where risk was high. I was nervous, but yeah, I mean the brrr method is buy, renovate, or rehab, rent, rinse, repeat.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and it definitely resonates, as you say, to Minnesota because it's going to get cold here real quick. Brrr. So yeah, my first property was in 2011, and I was living in a single family home. I had a couple of roommates. I was making my standard salary like every other individual or professional, but I couldn't get ahead. I just really struggled, and I've watched a lot of real estate stuff, and I thought, well, I need to duplicate it. I need to figure out how to get more equity. And I knew that the crash of 2008 had hurt. There was a lot of properties in the area that were going for good prices. Nobody had a lot of extra money, and it was going to be a stretch for me to get this house. And so right down the road from my own property over in Plymouth off of Medicine Lake in Golden Valley was a house that was being sold for listing at $60,000.
Isn't that incredible? Think about that for a moment.
Right, $60,000 for a 3,000 square foot house is just
you cannot find that anymore.
It's
by
unheard
the way,
of,
it's
right?
unheard of now.
And so when I looked at it, the listing had one photo, and it was a big snowbank, and it looked like this small little crappy cabin, which I'll share some pictures of. But when I walked up to the property and looked in the windows, I was amazed at the potential. And I had that vision where to see what could this be. And that's what you really need is you need to kind of hone your skills.
You got to visualize.
And to visualize what it's going to be, how could that be redone, and what can I do to improve the property. And so, first I was looking at taking on a partner, a good friend of mine. He was going to go 50-50 with me because I was nervous about how much money it was. And that didn't work out, which I'm actually glad. It's a lot easier to take on this type of investment without partners, because then there's all this, he said, she said, how much work are you doing? How much work am I doing? How much money are you putting in?
That's right.
Makes it very,
always
very
the
confusing.
risk with a partnership. That's a whole separate conversation.
Right. But needless to say, I knew that the load and the cost and the carrying cost of it being vacant was so small at that price that I could work on it nights and weekends outside my regular day job and build it up. And one thing I want the audience to know is I'd never done this before. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I just made the commitment and knew that I would figure it out as I went. And that's what it's really all about. And today, you fast forward from 2011, now it's 2024. We have so many tools out there to help us through these things, right? If you get stuck, you can jump in a YouTube video and figure out, how do I put trim around a window?
It's so different now.
What kind of baseboard material do I want? Or how do I put my own snap flooring in? Or do I want to do sheetrock taping and mudding myself? How complicated is it to do an arched window versus a standard window? So all these things, like now, there's never been a better time to latch on to all the resources out there to make that commitment and just figure it out as you go. And if you ever get in trouble, you can always call a contractor, right? And so that's a little bit about my story. My specific business model around brrr was to first look at all the mechanicals. So electrical, gas, furnace, water heaters, appliances, get them all replaced to brand new. So you don't have calls coming 3 years down the road. Oh, the water heater wet, and you're off on a vacation or something, and then you can't get to your house. And so I
call
wanted
it
to
the
have
non-sexy stuff, but very, very important stuff. It's very important stuff because it's the roots, the foundation of the home. And in a resale position, if you know that you're going to be moving that product in the next 10 to 15 years, you've got a new mechanical setup. And those are the calls that you're getting the most frequently from tenants, which we'll talk about in a minute. So having those fundamentals done is really, really important as part of the investment planning when you're considering doing a brrr.
brrr, yeah. And it's peace of mind, right? Like you're buying yourself freedom is what you're doing. You're putting a new furnace in, a new water heater, all new appliances, because you know that thing is going to be good for quite some time. Now, most of the time, obviously there's exceptions to the rule, but in general, if you want to replicate this, move from the first investment property to the second to the third, and you're going to manage it yourself, you're going to want to make sure that all the mechanicals are fresh and easy to maintain, if you will. And so, you know, that property for me, it took me a couple of years to build it, and along the way was a blast. I mean, I remember going to BMO, Building Materials Outlet, and finding these beautiful arched windows that were retailed for $1,200, and they were on sale for $100. And I'm
crazy?
Like, can I put arched windows like this in this house? Absolutely. This is how you do it. We put them in, and it's gorgeous. And so there's all kinds of little tricks that you can fall into, or you can learn about and do along the way. And I would just say that as you get into it, you're going to start picking up more and more of these things.
The creativity of that is what I think is so enlightening and what I really want to talk about more, Paul, because a lot of you that are considering investment or property and have tenants or already are in the midst of a renovation, think maybe within the box. And it's the creativity that we'll talk about next that's really elevated not only your income generating potential because of the details that you implemented, but the care and love that the tenants that you acquire, they appreciate the home. And it creates a care in the home that allows you some sanity, I call it as a landlord, some sanity and some longevity in the renovations you've done. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would like to look at that more as an emotional appeal, right? Like when someone comes in and looks at a property, if it's the same as every other cookie cutter house down the street, it doesn't have that emotional appeal. It's more of a financial decision, and it's more of a, okay, this is the house.
It's about the money then, not about the people.
It's not about the people, and it's not about the heart. But if you have a little bit of vision, you think about it. Like for me, I looked at, I replaced all doors, all windows. And when I replaced the windows, I'm like, well, what would it be like if I put granite windowsills in rather than wood? That adds a very beautiful element to the house. You're going to get a reflection come into the light off the bottom of the windowsill. And I went for it because I knew I could take the scrap from the granite countertops and make those extra parts and put them in. Those are little things that add a lot of character that make people emotionally loaded and feel like warm in the house, like someone put extra care and love in that. So.
Well, it becomes a home for those that are looking to be landlords and want to build an investment portfolio. Imagine being on the receiving end of that experience and living in this home that is you're spending rent on. For those that can't buy a home and need to look at a rental option, how they view that experience. We hear the horror stories of being a landlord, and we'll talk about that and honest, right? We want to have that real conversation. So how do you, if you want to explore being a landlord and building an investment portfolio and helping people that are in transition and need to rent a home, how do you elevate that experience so they want and love that home and care for it, and you're not walking in on the back end of that with a shit show? I'll just be honest, right? Because we've all been there. We've seen it. We've sold it. You can walk into some pretty horrific situations where homes have been destroyed in a rental position. And you've not had that experience, Paul.
No, I haven't. And I think that what you can do is you can reduce risk. You can't eliminate it, but you can reduce it. And my methodology might not be the best financial, meaning like I'm not going to get top, rent on return. I'm not going to get top dollar for the rental. But what I am going to get is I'm going to get peace of mind. I'm going to get good renters in there. I'm going to get someone who cares for the home, less calls, more appreciation. I look at my renters as customers. They're no different than any customer. I take care of them. I bring them a little care package come Christmas time, and I thank him for being a good renter and taking care of my home. And so if you set your thing up, you set your business model and your investment strategy up like that, you're going to have a lot more peace of mind, a lot more happiness.
Absolutely. So on that note, when you are interviewing your tenants, first of all, it's the acquisition. So right now, today, in a time where, let's be frank, the real estate's gotten really expensive. And backtracking, by the way, before we finish, we're going to talk about the value of your $57,000 investment that you now paid off in full.
Oh, as of last month.
And the 2 years you spent renovating that home and the reap of return from that while renting it and being able to provide a home to a family that really needed one, that rented it and took care of it. It's a great story. Yeah. Now coming into 2024 and leading into 2025, how do you find those value opportunities in a market that's increasing so quickly in terms of value? Like the investment cost going in is really expensive. Pay to play is high right now. So what do you do about that?
Well, you do what you can, right? You've always got your feelers out there. You're looking for opportunities. You're looking for places you can add value. It might be something as simple as, a single family, 3-bed, 2-bath that has a basement that needs to be finished. And so you buy this property, you put some sweat equity in, which we're talking about sweat equity here. I'm a huge believer in sweat equity. Yeah. You got to put the time in. And so you look at that house, well, it needs a basement. Well, okay, you refinish the basement. Maybe you put $25,000-$30,000 into this 3-bed, 2-bath, and it appraises, for an extra $60,000. Well, you made yourself $30,000 and you had a lot of fun along the way. You learn how to do a lot of things and you feel more competent as an investor and an individual. So some things you're going to hire out, some things you're going to try to do yourself, right? Again, for new people, I would recommend hiring out electrical, plumbing, major appliances like HVAC, things like that. And then take on some of the smaller stuff, right? You can do painting. Can you do trim? Can you do baseboard? Can you put your own kitchen cabinets in? Things like that. Those are all things that you can learn to do on your own that is going to equate to value.
It takes work and commitment.
Right.
But if you really want to do that, it is absolutely possible to take on a lot of those DIY projects, and that is where you make your money later on.
And how rewarding. I mean, your friends and your family coming over and looking at some of your work. Maybe you get a buddy to come over and help you for a day. It's just a good bonding experience when you're hanging out with people working on these things. It's a heck of a journey. I just think that, the BRRR method is probably one of a ton of methods. It's not going to bring back, dollar for dollar quite as much, but it gives me the lifestyle and the peace of mind that I like and that I want. So I replicated that first house. Then I bought a house up in Champlin. The roof was all caved in because a water line broke. The owner did not know, what to do with the property. A contractor told him it was going to be $70,000 to fix it. I offered him, a respectful $150,000 cash offer. He took it. I spent 3 months renovated it. Put about, I think that one was like 30 or 40,000 into it. After repair value was probably in the 250 range. Now it's probably in the 350 to 375. So you're just basically taking and putting a little bit of sweat equity to repair and get yourself in a better starting position when you start the rental process. Right. And so for me, I'm not a fan of 30-year mortgages because you're not knocking down that principal very fast. I'm a big fan of 20% down, 20-year mortgage. Seeing results, right away from day one on where that's going. Now there's drivers that help me see the big picture. There's rounding errors that aren't going to make a difference, and there's drivers. And the drivers are, I've got a lot more control over my investment properties than I would if I invested in the stock market. So I don't know what Coca-Cola is going to do next quarter, but I do know what I'm going to be able to do to my property, right? And so I've got a lot more control over my investment. Now, not only that, I've got an inflation barrier or a defense mechanism, right? If inflation goes up like it's going like crazy right now, houses are going to go along with it. And so I don't have to be as concerned about that. And then, of course, we're buying down the loan. So every month you're making a payment, a certain amount is going to principal. You can look at that as just part of your net worth. You're constantly driving that loan down. The appreciation, call it 3%, 4% that you're getting with houses is constantly going up. And you're working the angles to get the best model you can. So
brilliant. It really is brilliant. So what's your day job?
So I actually am an injection mold artisan at heart. Yeah, I've been doing injection molding and mechanical engineering my whole career.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Just went off on my own. I've started the company, nights and weekends for the last 5 years, and I've gone completely full committed only about 5 months ago. And so I'm really excited.
That's incredible.
Yeah, Evok Polymers.
So what does that mean exactly?
So what we do at Evok is we do custom injection molding with optimized pricing for parts for other manufacturers that don't know a lot about plastics or they need a plastic injection molding part. So
incredible.
My career started at Rollerblade. Rollerblade went from $5 million to $350 million in a short 5 years. And so being part of that journey, I was surrounded by, talented engineers and designers from all over the world.
That's
we just
amazing.
had so much growth and excitement. I've worked in medical device at Boston Scientific. I've worked in semiconductor. I've worked in, power sports, marine, snowmobile. Done a lot of different disciplines in injection molded plastics and thought it was time to get out and really harness my skills and bring that to the rest of the world through parts.
Incredible. So you've been doing this your entire career, and you decided to delve into the real estate journey in 2011.
2011 was my big push. Yeah.
You've been going ever since.
Absolutely. I've got a property right now in Robbinsdale. The numbers on that one, I bought it for $130,000. I've probably put which was a
really
good
great.
buy. Very repressed property. A lot of sweat that you have to put in this property, but all new doors, all new windows, all new kitchen, bathroom, redid the entire place, put a lot of that, authentic differences that you wouldn't necessarily do when you're remodeling. I put a farmer's sink in, which is really cool, right?
And the cost differential is not that much.
It's not
with
that
those
much.
Selections.
It's a little bit more sweat, a little
Harder
bit
to
more
install.
work. Yeah, hard to install, but boy, does that bring some love to the house when you walk in. It feels very warm.
That's what I love about what you're doing, because many investors, believe it or not, really look at it cookie cutter. That's the lens. And they're just putting a very traditional, not elevated, ordinary, not extraordinary, I call it.
Right, ordinary.
And the difference between ordinary and extraordinary isn't necessarily financial. It's taking the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's
putting the
difference.
extra elements in it. Right?
Putting the extra elements in it. I cannot say how valuable that is.
Yeah.
So valuable.
And there's a time and place for everything, right? I always use the term, is the juice worth the squeeze? And, in some cases, a farmer's sink is definitely going to be worth it. There's other things where it doesn't make a lot of sense. But for me, adding some of those extra elements, and then, the further you get into it, what's going to be worth the squeeze, Do I want to put a nice LED light that wraps all the way around the perimeter of the cove ceiling? So that's an extra element of warmth and character. Yeah, it's going to take me, 4 hours to install. It's going to cost me $150 for the lights, and I'm going to just push through it. And all of a sudden, you've got an extra element that makes sense, right?
Brilliant. Love it. That's an absolutely incredible journey, and you've been very profitable.
Yeah, no, it's worked really well.
I mean,
it's a lot of nights and weekends, right? But when you enjoy doing it, when you see vision and you get better at it, it just becomes a lot of fun.
So again, for the audience, explain BRRR, what those words represent, what they mean.
Right. So from what I know, again, I'm not the expert, but what I know and what I remember is buy, renovate, or rehab, rent, rinse, repeat. And you basically build it all out and then set it and forget it. Get yourself into a really good tenant, a good lease, take care of them like customers, and be accommodating, be there for the phone. If something's going on, run in there and try to help them out. Make sure that they know that you got their back, and continue replicating that business model, right?
So are you, you're keeping the first house, are you leveraging then the equity to buy the next? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so in my case, it's a little different, but the first one, I was strapped. Like I'd mentioned, I didn't have any extra money. I was scared. I took money out of my 401k to make it happen. And then as soon as I got over the hump, I refinanced.
Okay.
And so when I refinanced for whatever I could afford, the lowest year possible, which was a 10-year mortgage. And I took a line of credit out to finance the second house.
Okay.
And then, time doesn't stop, right? And so as you're making payments on these mortgages and they're going down, it's going to start kind of, capitalizing on each other. It's going to start, folding on top of each other.
Right.
And you're going to start getting yourself in an equity position where you can actually go out and buy a house for cash. And that's where you've got a lot of power, right? If you find a property that's got that opportunity and you can go in and say, yep, I'll offer you, $180,000 cash, no inspection. I've seen the whole house. I know what I need to be in. That's where you really have got a lot of power and leverage to start, cookie cutter, like start adding more to your portfolio. But like you had mentioned before, Cari Ann, it's a very competitive market right now. I think the investors get out there and they're hard to find, these houses. But you just have to keep your eyes and ears open. You got to keep working. And I would recommend, tying up with a realtor and letting them know your exact position. Calling one of your agents and saying, hey, I've got my eyes open. This is what I'm looking for. This is the area. You find a repressed property. I'm not willing to take on a whole remodel, but I'm willing to take on a little bit of DIY for a discount on my first house. And that's how the ball gets started. It's just like my pivot point, my pinnacle timeline. What happened to me is exactly what's going to happen with other people that want to get into this game.
I agree.
They're going to hit that spot. They're going to take the leap of faith, and then they're going to be happy.
So we're going to talk about renovation in a minute because it runs near and dear to my heart. We do ROI analysis when we're listing homes for our clients. I cannot tell you how many homes are in this city that need to be aesthetically touched. There's so much dated inventory out there. So when you're looking at a value opportunity, especially now as we're seeing more inventory hit the system, it's still absolutely a seller's market. Our supply demand challenges in this city are still very real. We don't have enough supply of inventory to support the buyers out there.
Right.
However, I will say there is a value prop conversation around homes that have datedness or are not like eye candy, because people react to that eye candy and it's very, very valuable. Very valuable. So there's an opportunity to get a great investment there. I want to jump back quickly, though, to your 10-year comment. We talked about this offline earlier. Visit with the audience your perspective on the 30-year.
Well, so I'm just personally, I'm pretty transparent about this, but I'm not a big fan of 30-year mortgages. I just really have a tough time making that payment on a 30-year mortgage and watching how much goes to principal. Like the biggest thing I can recommend to any new investor that's getting into the game is to really study the amortization schedule. Really look at what happens in year 30, year 28, year 25. You're finally starting to make a mark, after year 20. And that's why I like the 20-year mortgage, just because you're not making a lot of headway. Now, the banks are going to want to get you into the biggest loan you can, and they're going to stretch you out based on your income, and they're going to get you into a 30-year mortgage, which most people are in, of course. But you really don't start building wealth and equity until you get down into the 20s, in my opinion. And so that's just something that I think you need to be aware of and consider of when you're making these decisions. That's
Absolutely. I totally agree. And we talk about that all the time, just as a individual family buying a home out there. It is just like a protocol, a rinse and repeat, as you call it, on I'll do a conventional 30-year. It's not even on the radar otherwise. Now, one thought is if you really want to guarantee that lower monthly, you just pay down more. each month and commit
Right.
to that.
And
That's
if
the
you're
option.
disciplined, you could make those extra payments to go towards principal,
Right.
which is great, right?
Yeah.
And you
It's actually doing it though.
Right. It's actually doing it, right. And I'm not that disciplined, so I'm going to put myself into a position where and my goal is obviously with, 20% down on any investment property, you've got to have 20% down. You're going to pay a little bit more money in interest, because it's not homesteaded. And, you're looking for a break even. Okay. A break even is that if the rent comes in at $2,000 a month and the mortgage, taxes, and insurance come in at $2,000 a month, and you're good to go. This is a long-term strategy, right? We're not looking for major cash flow right out of the gate. We're looking for a long-term strategy, just like we're going to collect baseball cards, we're going to collect houses.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Okay, so if I were to give the audience the 5 top based on this conversation with Paul right now, and just renovating, period. Like if you have an opportunity as a homeowner, a first-time home buyer, we'll talk about that. Go after the ugly. Don't be afraid of the ugly. Go after the ugly.
Get the vision.
Yeah, and then understand, okay, let's just run this. Let's say it's a $300,000 home and you have to switch out AC, HVAC. I have a number. You tell me yours. HVAC and hot water heater, the 3s. Those 3, usually on an ugly, sometimes you'll be lucky enough that it's already done, but usually those need to be done. What would be your budget for those 3 for a decent upgrade?
Yeah, so I would say, if it's a forced air AC and furnace, you're probably looking at, let's just say $10,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a very reasonable
3-bed, 2-bath,
number.
2,000 square feet, maybe $10,000 for that. Water heater is only going to be like $1,500.
Right. Super cheap, by the way. Hot water heaters are not a big deal. No. Drain tile, believe it or not, everybody, is not that expensive to put in. We're in a water state, right? So if you want to be assured and you're going to finish lower level space, putting a drain tile system in is a smart move, even if it's been it's a dry basement historically. You just don't want to run that risk. It's a cheap upgrade if you're going to be doing a renovation anyway. So put that down on your list. And then radon mitigation. Radon mitigation is something that is being installed in all new build now. That's code. It's a cheap upgrade.
Right.
Even if you have a low radon count, I am a huge proponent of radon mitigation. Why? Fresh air circulation. It's great for the air. It's a great thing to put in. So put it in, $2,000, not a big deal. And then the money is in color, fixtures. You can put in a great quartz counter, not as expensive as you would think in your typical $300,000 home. You pull down the wallpaper and you stay with a real neutral palette. You embellish with the details like the hardware and the lighting fixtures, which you can get great stuff. Thinking outside the box and bring in that creative element, maybe a splash of wallpaper on one wall. It's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, there's a
really
lot of low-hanging fruit out there too, just mowing the lawn and getting the lawn leveled.
Yeah.
And putting some lipstick on it, some really nice paint job, it can really make a big difference on a home. And so you start with things like that to look at what the value is. And then you start going a little bit deeper. Of course, the mechanicals, we talked about that. I find it to be really important. But again, if you talked about the 5 big things, I mean, the first one I really want to push and make sure I emphasize is that, don't think that you need to have everything figured out, right? Make the commitment and figure it out later. That's the key.
That's what everybody's afraid to do.
And I know that sounds crazy, but you've got a lot of tools out there, a lot of people that probably want to support you along the journey. YouTube is at your side to walk you through things. And if you ever get in trouble, you can call a contractor, but just keep working at it. And you're going to develop a skill set as you go, right? You're going to learn how to do crown molding, okay? Oh, how do I cut these weird angles into this and that? Yeah. You're going to figure it out. And then after you do it, you're going to be proud and you're going to move on to the next house that's going to have a great opportunity for crown molding. So that would be one of my first ones is to really touch on the commitment and figure it out later. The second one would be is to understand the financials, right? What's moving the needle for your net worth? Meaning, am I going to jump into this thing 20% down in a 30-year mortgage? Am I jumping in 20% down on a 20-year mortgage? Am I breaking even? I went to Ireland, and a lot of my uncles over in Ireland, they're all house investors. They all have rental properties. And over there, where the interest rates are and the house values and things like that is completely different in the United States. They have to buy a property, put a renter in it, and then pay on top of the rent to break even. So they're investing and renting. And so what does that tell me? That tells me we've got it probably pretty good here in the United States, you know?
That's expensive real estate.
Yeah, and so the conditions are different. Look outside the box, kind of think for yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But understand the financials, understand that amortization schedule and where your money's going and what's hitting your bottom line and what's not. So that would be a second one. What else do we want to talk about? You said 5, so I'm going to go down to number 3.
Yeah.
Number 3, it would be probably character, like adding little character features into it. So like I just redid a garage last week, and I was putting LP Smart Trim around the garage, and it's just beautiful material, 25-year warranty, straight. You put it on, it stays, it looks beautiful. And I could have just went straight across the top of the garage door, but instead I put an arch over it, right? I took the time to cut a big archway and put, a drip edge over the top of that.
Perfect.
And then Vulcamed it in place, and it just looks so much more character than what a standard,
It's amazing what you can do with that little detail.
Yeah, and people are afraid to do it, but the truth is you can do it. You look at other houses and you see how they're doing it, you can do it yourself.
A big reason why a lot of people love going and touring homes, to be inspired, to get ideas.
Absolutely.
And there's so many fun events going on in our city every year with the Artisan and the Parade of Homes, the contractors tours, the builder tour. You can be very much inspired and just take one element and implement it into an investment opportunity, and it's incredible what can happen to your bottom line.
Yeah. And I'm also a big believer in lighting. Like, I didn't touch base on that very much,
Me
but
too.
Taking an old light fixture, pulling it out and switching it to, LED can lights with halos and a dimmer can completely transform a room, right? It's like, oh my God, this room feels so much bigger and it's well lit, and there's just so many values to that, and it does not cost a lot of money.
No, it doesn't. And dimmers are such a modern and loved accent piece in a home. Very valuable as an upgrade when you eventually sell the property.
Yep.
Oh, we could go on the renovation front. That's a whole
amenities.
Piece.
I mean, what it comes down to is, are you going to add some amenities, and you want the low cost amenities that bring big value. Everything you do. I think about dollar in, dollar out, right? If I put $1 in, am I going to get that dollar out?
Or more.
Or more.
Yeah.
Typically, no. But the one thing that I do know is one of the best investments for dollar in, dollar out would be exterior siding. I think that is the number one best investment to upgrade the property.
Agree. A hardy product, especially anything maintenance free in this day and age with our weather inclements, especially a really, really great consideration.
Yeah, cement board or LP Smart Siding, fantastic products. 25-year warranty, straight as an arrow, and it just goes up nice.
Really, really impressive, Paul. You should be really proud of yourself. I mean, it takes a lot of bravery, right? At a young age, when you started this, and still young.
Well,
I'm not saying that. But I just think that, the whole point here is to share nuggets. I always say nuggets, and learning from each other on how do you support your future? How do you build an investment portfolio that can be a part of your retirement into 1, 2, 3 decades, and something that'll fill your soul and you feel like you're giving back at the same time. It's a really commendable, cool business plan.
Yeah,
and I love the initials.
Exactly, and there's some legacy behind it, right? Like, you're actually leaving a mark, right? You're making something that's going to stay there for decades, if not even longer. And so, if you're going to do it sustainably, do it right. That's why I choose, like, a lot of my favorite is granite. I love granite. I love granite countertops, using granite in weird places because it's so beautiful, the material and sustainability. And it's a natural slice of evolution. Granite is 600 to 800 million years old. How do we cut that, polish it, and use it in our everyday life? It's beautiful stuff.
Incredible. So how does one follow you, like both personally and professionally? If they want to learn more about you, Paul, how would one do that?
I'd probably want to reach out to you. I mean, you can. I'm actually going to be doing my own series of videos for Evok Polymers on plastics. That's coming through. We just finished our first video.
Excellent.
But when it comes to house remodeling, I've been kind of under the radar. So maybe you and I can get together, another 6 months or a year from now and talk a little bit more about some of these DIY investment strategies. Because I genuinely want to share what I've done with other folks, because I've been there. I've been at the very beginning stages of trying to figure out if I can handle this. And it's scary. And I just want you to know that it's doable. Commit and figure it out as you go. That would be my thought.
Find a great lender, understand the money. Don't be afraid to do work. DIYing is not as hard as you think it is. It is very, very much something you can do. And be creative.
That's right.
There you go.
I love it.
All right, everybody. A little bit more on BRRR. Click on the link below, and we will come and maybe do this video again. Actually, we will revisit this conversation on the current renovation you're doing in maybe 6 months.
Yeah, maybe 6 months, and maybe we walk around some properties. That might be nice to just walk around and look at some of the details and stuff that give it that authenticity.
Yeah, come back around 6 months. We'll be talking to Paul again, and we will link up your plastics video production that you're doing below, so people can learn about that. If you're interested in learning more about this, it's really fascinating.
Evok Polymers. Yep.
Had no idea. There you go. Thank you so much for being with us today on Fly the Coop. We will see you next time. Make it a great day.